Billionaire Elon Musk disguises as homeless at a fancy restaurant. What happens next will shock you. Elon Musk sat quietly in his sleek, futuristic office at the Tesla headquarters in Palo Alto, surrounded by towering glass windows that offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The walls were adorned with blueprints of rockets, electric cars, and AI schematics. On his desk lay the latest prototype of a Neuralink chip, his phone buzzing occasionally with notifications about stock prices, business deals, and scientific updates. But none of it mattered at that moment. His mind was elsewhere, lost in a sea of thoughts. What really defines a person's worth, he wondered, staring blankly at the city lights. Is it money, status, fame, or something else entirely? As one of the richest men in the world, Elon was used to being treated like royalty. Wherever he went, doors opened before he even reached them. People listened when he spoke, not necessarily because of what he said, but because of who he was. It was as if his name alone carried a weight that commanded respect. But this privilege gnawed at him. Would people still respect me if I had nothing, he thought? If I looked like I didn't belong, would anyone treat me with kindness? Or would they dismiss me as irrelevant? It was more than curiosity. It was a burning need to understand human nature at its core. Elon had always been fascinated by people, what motivated them, what shaped their decisions, and how society's invisible rules dictated behavior. And so an idea was born. He decided to conduct an experiment, one where he would be the subject, not in a lab, not behind a computer, but in the real world. He would disguise himself as a homeless man, walk into one of Los Angeles's most luxurious restaurants, and observe how people treated someone they believed had nothing to offer. No one in his team knew about this plan. This was personal. The next few days were spent in preparation. Elon was meticulous, diving into every detail as if it were one of his Mars colonization projects. He didn't want to just look homeless. He wanted to feel the part, to blur the line between reality and disguise. He let his beard grow scruffy and uneven. His hair, usually neat, became wild and unkempt. He sourced old clothes from a thrift shop, faded, torn, stained with patches of discoloration. A bulky, threadbare coat hung loosely over his frame, its sleeves frayed at the edges. His jeans were ripped at the knees, and his boots had soles barely holding together, scuffed from intentional wear and tear. He even carried an old duffel bag stuffed with crumpled newspapers, broken zippers, and scraps of fabric to complete the look. To add authenticity, he smeared a bit of dirt on his face and hands, the faint smell of sweat and street grime lingering on his clothes. When he finally looked in the mirror, the transformation was startling. The confident, sharp-dressed billionaire had vanished. In his place stood a man who might be ignored on a busy street corner. Perfect, he muttered to himself. The night of the experiment arrived. Elon made his way to Les Jardins Étoiles, an upscale restaurant known for its exclusivity. Celebrities, CEOs, politicians, all gathered there to indulge in gourmet cuisine and bask in the glow of luxury. Reservations were booked months in advance, and the waiting list was longer than most people's bucket lists. As he approached the restaurant, he could feel the curious and sometimes disgusted glances from people on the street. A couple walking past whispered something to each other, stealing a glance at him before crossing to the other side. A man in a sharp suit pulled his briefcase closer, as if Elon posed some sort of threat. But this was just the beginning. Pushing open the heavy glass doors, Elon stepped inside. The contrast was jarring. Warm, ambient lighting bathed the space in a golden hue. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like stars against the high, vaulted ceilings. Elegant couples sat at neatly arranged tables draped in white linens, sipping expensive wine and engaging in hushed conversations. And then, every eye in the restaurant turned toward him. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Forks hovered in the air. The maitre d', A tall man in a pristine black suit approached with measured steps, his expression somewhere between confusion and annoyance. Sure, the maitre d' said, his voice cool and controlled. May I help you? Elon's heart pounded, not from fear but from anticipation. I'd like a table, he replied softly, his voice raspy as if worn from hardship. The maitre d's eyes swept over him, taking in the ragged clothes, the worn-out boots, the scruffy beard. His polite smile faded into a thin, forced line. I'm afraid we're fully booked for the evening, he said curtly, without even checking the reservation list. I don't mind waiting, Elon replied. The maitre d' leaned in slightly, lowering his voice but not his arrogance. This isn't the kind of place for someone like you. Perhaps there's a diner down the street that can assist you. Elon felt a mixture of disappointment and intrigue. This was exactly the reaction he'd expected, but witnessing it firsthand was different from imagining it. I just need a glass of water, he said quietly. The maitre d' let out a soft, condescending chuckle. Water's for paying customers, sir. Before Elon could respond, a voice from across the room cut through the tension. If it's such a problem, he can sit with me. Everyone turned to look. A young woman, seated alone at a corner table, had stood up. She wasn't wearing designer clothes or flashy jewelry, simple, elegant, and genuine. Her name, as Elon would later learn, was Ava. The maitre d' hesitated, clearly displeased, but forced a tight smile. Of course, madam, he said, stepping aside reluctantly. Elon walked over, his heart lighter with each step. He sat across from Ava, offering a small, grateful smile. Thank you, he whispered. Ava shrugged casually. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. They began to talk about nothing and everything. Ava didn't ask intrusive questions about why he looked the way he did. She didn't pry or make assumptions. She treated him like a person, not a problem. They discussed books, the stars, childhood dreams, and even space, a topic that made Elon smile internally, given his work with SpaceX. Around them, the restaurant buzzed with judgmental glances. Diners whispered behind manicured hands, their eyes darting toward the strange pair. But Ava didn't seem to notice or care. For the first time in years, Elon felt seen, not as a billionaire, not as a tech genius, but as a human being. After nearly an hour, he knew it was time to reveal the truth. Ava, he said gently, there's something I need to tell you. She looked up, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Elon reached into his bag, pulled out a cloth napkin, and wiped away the dirt from his face. He removed his beanie, running a hand through his messy hair. Slowly, his familiar features emerged. The sharp cheekbones, the piercing blue eyes, the subtle confidence that no disguise could fully hide. Ava's eyes widened. Wait, you're Elon Musk, he finished softly. The restaurant erupted into stunned silence. The maitre d' turned ghostly pale, his mouth slightly agape. Diners who had sneered earlier now sat up straighter, their expressions shifting from disdain to eager recognition. Elon stood, addressing the entire room. Tonight, I came here not as a billionaire, but as someone invisible. Someone you'd cross the street to avoid. Someone you'd dismiss without a second thought. And what I saw was revealing. Someone, he paused, letting his words sink in. Most of you looked at me with judgment, some of you with pity, but only one person here treated me with kindness, without knowing who I was or what I had. And that says everything about her and about you. He turned to Ava, his voice softer now. You reminded me that kindness doesn't cost a thing, but its value is beyond measure. Then, in a moment that left the entire restaurant speechless, Elon announced, I'd like to invest $1 million in whatever dream Ava wants to pursue, because the world needs more people like her. Ava gasped, tears welling in her eyes. The maitre d', flustered, stumbled over an apology, but Elon simply nodded politely. This isn't about money, he said. It's about humanity. The story went viral overnight. News outlets, social media platforms, and talk shows buzzed with the headline, Elon Musk disguises as homeless, exposes society's true colors. Ava used the investment to start a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping the homeless, providing shelter, education, and job opportunities. The maitre d', humbled by the experience, publicly apologized and became an advocate for treating all people with dignity. As for Elon, he carried the lesson with him, not as a billionaire seeking validation, but as a man who had witnessed the fragile, beautiful complexity of human nature. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can ripple through the world in ways you'd never expect.